Don't ask me. I don't know what the hell that was. I'm like, I gotta sit down and make Tomura's video today. How the hell do you do an intro for Tomura's video? That freaking train wreck of nightmare fuel and childhood trauma. Like, just sit down and be as creepy as possible, Matt. That'll probably get us to where we need to be for the rest of this. And I think it worked, so let's just continue. Alright, so Tomura Shigaraki. This has been a hotly requested video. It's a video I've wanted to do for a while. Of course, the main villain of the entire series, you know, Izuku's parallel. You got Izuku's master, All Might, raising him up to be the greatest hero. And then you have his evil counterpart, All for One, raising up Tomura to be his successor. So, there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about regarding the character. It's just... this isn't gonna be a fun kind of discussion. You know, I mean, I'm pining for the days when I did the 1A discussion videos. Just like, hey guys, let's talk about Koda. Oh man, he loves the little bunnies. There are no little bunnies in Tomura's backstory. If they are, he killed them. Probably by accident, and he has a repressed memory of it that he will awaken in the middle of his freaking night terrors, alright? This is gonna be pretty sad at parts, okay? But, you know, I was waiting for Tomura and the League of Villains to reappear in the series, alright? Because I figured, alright, they've been conspicuously sort of absent from the last few arcs. In the Endeavor arc, we kind of got Dabi showing up, but aside from that, we really haven't seen Tomura and the rest of the League for a while, so I thought, okay, yeah, Horikoshi's gonna probably bring them back in a big way, and lo and behold, last few chapters, he did that full freaking force, if you saw the last one. So, there will be spoilers regarding this. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start basic stuff off of Tomura's character, and when I start getting around to, like, okay, this is where we're talking about the stuff that's just happened in the last few weeks in the manga, I'll mention that in the video if you want to turn it off there because of spoilers or whatever. But yeah, I think this is a good time to talk about Tomura. Also, I got this badass new wall scroll at Tekko. It's actually the last one they had at their freaking stall, so I feel like I lucked out there. So, let's get into this. Okay, I cleared the first hurdle. How do you start the video? Now it's how do you start the character discussion on this guy? But no, let's talk about his design. Let's start basic, alright? Let's just start from his design. Tomura looks like a scary as shit villain, does he not? Now, not every single villain in fiction has to have, like, you know, the slasher movie, like Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers kind of look that actually inspires, like, blood-curdling fear. Sometimes it makes more sense for a villain just to look really sleek and cool, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, Tomura, no, he definitely goes with the, you know, the creepy nightmare fuel kind of look. It's a very unique design. I mean, can you think of any other character that, you know, takes hands and attaches them all over their body? I mean, the world of fiction is pretty vast, so maybe somewhere, but when I first saw Tomura appear during the USJ arc, when he popped out of the portal, this dude with hands all over him, I didn't even know what the hell to make of that character design. I was thinking, like, are the hands fake? Or is it his, like, quirk? Are the hands, like, coming out of his body? And then later you find out, no, they're just hands of people that he has attached all over him. And then you later find out they're hands of his family. So it's like, what the hell? Like, that's something I've never seen before or since, and it's blood-curdling. It really is. Picture yourself walking down an alley at night. Alright, and you're walking down the alley, and you happen to see Tomura turn the corner and walk toward you. I mean, just the appearance alone, rather intimidating, and even without the hands, he's still pretty scary. The dude looks like a dried out zombie. He doesn't have, like, lips. He has this, like, scratch or this scar on one of his lips there. Dude needs some moisturizer and some eye drops, like, bad. His hair looks all grimy, like he hasn't washed it in, like, ever. And he just has, like, this disheveled maniac psycho kind of look to him, which, I mean, he is rather unnerved upstairs. This is the thing with Tomura, considering, and we'll get into his backstory, you know, in the spoiler section, because we just found out big things about his backstory. But the thing with Tomura is he is unhinged. He is extremely mentally unstable. He's intelligent. He has his moments. He's not an idiot, but he's not just like a blubbering fool, but it's this weird sort of balancing act with his psyche, where it's like he has these plans in his head, but his unstable mental state constantly, you know, is just, sometimes it actually works in his favor, other times it is his detriment, alright? And this makes sort of like a juggling act of a character, not certainly not typical. I mean, like, this is a world of superheroes and supervillains. That's what My Hero Academia is. Horikoshi, if he wanted to just play it safe, you could have just had, like, okay, here is Izuku Midoriya, the hero of the story, and he's being raised up by All Might, the greatest hero in the world. I'm like, okay, that's great. Who are they gonna fight against? You could have had, like, some stereotypical, 1980s cartoon, like, organization, oh, I am the big evil bad guy that rules over the organization called, Evil, but it's spelled EVIL, and it's like an acronym that stands for something. I mean, it would have been rather cheesy, but I mean, you could have had that, like an evil organization trying to rule the world. No. Instead, we get Tomura. And the great thing about Tomura, and I've mentioned this in Izuku's video because the two work as parallels to each other, it's not Izuku going up against this crazy powerful villain that's, way more experienced than him, way more deadly than him. I mean, yes, there is All For One, but I'm under the opinion, All For One, he's not going to be around for very much longer. He's not going to be the final battle between Izuku and, in the entire series. It's not going to be Izuku versus All For One, and that's going to be it. The real threat here to Izuku is Tomura, who is also around the same level as him. I believe Tomura is a little bit older than Izuku, but he's following in the footsteps of All For One, trying to become this great villain, trying to follow in All For One's footsteps, and he's learning along the way. He makes mistakes, he stumbles, he learns, he comes back stronger. Same deal with Izuku, and I freaking love that. I've seen it many times, people mentioning this, like the villain and the hero are basically scaling the same way, and Tomura makes a bunch of video game references throughout the entire story. That's his kind of like little gimmick, his little shtick, where he's just like, oh, we almost got a game over, but luckily we got one more quarter in the machine. It's time for a continue. That's just how he talks. That's the kind of jokes he makes, right? And so that's a really cool way to look at it. It's like, so far in the story, we've never seen Izuku just be, like, steamrolled by a stronger opponent. Like, we see that a lot in a lot of other shonen. Like, in Bleach, Ichigo gets his Shinigami powers, he's fighting through a bunch of hollows, and then he gets steamrolled by Byakuya. Just shing, down, dropped. We got something, One Piece, Crocodile. Luffy just like, alright, I'm doing good, and then Crocodile just throws him in the freaking desert. Izuku's had some pretty tough fights so far, but he's never gone up against an opponent, like, directly, that's just like, oh, Izuku, pounds him right into the ground, and Izuku's just this mangled, bloody mess, and he just took that L completely and utterly. That fight with Muscular was pretty tough, but he managed to pull it off. Izuku did not fight All For One directly, thank God, because there would be no Izuku left. But, we haven't really had that yet in the series. I'm not saying we might still get that, maybe, sure, possibly, but the way Horikoshi is laying this out, he's like, no, I want Tomura's journey to be one of struggle and strife. I don't want this to just be a thing where you have the hero beginning to learn how to be a hero while the evil organization is like looming overhead, like, we're already super strong, we're already better than you, and the hero is like, alright, I gotta get stronger and stronger and stronger if I want to get to like level 100 and defeat you. No, it's like, Tomura and Izuku, they're both at like level 20s right now, and they're just do. And to go along with that, with his scary as hell appearance and his fractured mental state, what is the worst possible quirk you could think somebody like that could have? Now, I don't mean worse in the sense that his quirk is not very effective. Oh no, it's effective as all hell. What I'm simply saying is you see someone like this walking down the road, and he passes by you, and he's just mumbling to himself like, Father, Mother, what am I gonna do, Father? When he's like scratching his flesh away, like, Mother, Father, what am I gonna do? What is the worst possibility you think somebody like that could have in society? How about the ability to literally disintegrate anything he touches? And that's what his quirk is. Decay. Simple, effective, a perfect metaphor for how he views the entire world at large, what he wants to do with it. 5 letters, Hokai in Japanese, Decay. And how the quirk works is without discrimination, anything that he touches with his hands, once all 5 fingers touch said object, doesn't matter if it's a living thing, a human, an animal, something organic like a piece of fruit or an inanimate object, this bottle of water, water, doesn't matter. All 5 fingers touch it, it begins to just decay and just rot away into dust in Tomura's hands. And that kind of puts into new perspective, actually, when you look at this scene, how close Izuku came to death right here. Basically, Tomura might as well have had an exploding collar wrapped around Izuku's neck, because if that last finger touched, then it would have just... just rotted away right there. Very impressive quirk, but also fractured mental states. So he's got to be extraordinarily careful with touching literally anything. Alright? And it actually leads to some really cool moments whenever Tomura has to pick something up. Horikoshi always has to do a really, interesting way to, gesticulate his fingers in order to pick something up, because he has to make very, very sure that whenever Tomura's handling something, he's not touching it with all of his fingers. Right? So, and even, Horikoshi even came on record and said he was actually moved to tears trying to draw Tomura because of all the hands and, all the different things you have to keep track of with that. And also, I have a few friends that are artists, and a few of them have actually told me that drawing hands is one of the more difficult things to do, when you're starting out as an artist. So I can imagine, there's 14 pairs of 14 different hands attached to Tomura's body at any given time with his villain outfit on. So having to draw them all the time was a major pain for Horikoshi. But that, you know what? That speaks volumes, I think, about him as a mangaka, because he had a picture in his head of what he wanted Tomura to look like. And he was in the middle of drawing him, and he's like, holy crap, this is hard. You think, after a certain point, he'd be like, do I want to draw a character like this whenever there's a major arc featuring him? Do I want to draw somebody like this all the time? And granted, Tomura doesn't always appear with his hands covering him, but he appears enough. So it's like, no, he stayed the course. He's like, I want this appearance because it works, and I certainly think it does. Like I said, even without the hands, he's creepy enough with, the zombie appearance, but yeah. So, you'll have a lot of scenes, when Bakugo blasted off the hand off of Tomura's face. He had to pick it up, very carefully like this and, pop it back on, whenever he's handling anything like a phone or something. You just gotta be very careful to always not be touching it with all 5, fingers, because he can't control that. It's a completely involuntary. It's not like Tomura can be like, alright, I'm gonna pick up this bottle of water now with my hand, and I choose not to activate Decay. Okay, we're good. No, he can't control it. Once all 5 fingers touch, it just immediately disintegrates. 5-finger death decay, that's what it is. Now, he has gotten to, I think he controlled the exact, rate it decays. At least he's gotten better at it, to decay something a lot faster. When he was fighting against Aizawa at the USJ, he, touched Aizawa's shoulder with, elbow. Yeah. His shoulder, elbow. I know body parts. Yeah, he touched his elbow like this, and it began to decay first Aizawa's, clothing he was wearing, so his hero outfit, and then it began to chip slowly away at the different layers of skin that Aizawa had, and you saw muscle underneath it. So it was decaying, but it was, at a relatively slow rate. It wasn't, disintegrated into ash immediately, but it was slowly being chipped away, and it just looked like a painful ability, because Aizawa's skin was, the part of it that was decaying, you could see the muscle and the rest of his skin as the decay began to spread. It was chipping away and getting cracked and just it's just, I don't know, something like that just makes me really freaked out. And I think it applies to his own flesh as well. Tomura, I think, also has to be careful about touching his own body, because I'm pretty sure decay works indiscriminately when all 5 fingers connect. So if Tomura's not careful and touches his own flesh, it could decay that away as well. I believe that's how it works anyway. I don't think it's an exemption to his own body. So, yeah, now moving on to he's a beautifully crafted villain in terms of aesthetic and just the way he's, scaling with Izuku. Now, moving on to his motive and his backstory. So, gotta tell you the spoiler alert right here, because recently in the manga we found out a lot about his backstory, and so I just want to bring that up right now. If you've read up to that point, then continue. If not, if you want to just stick to the anime or whatever, coming out later this year, actually, then yeah, I think you should stop the video right here. Okay, so Tomura's motive, what he wants, his ultimate goal. All right. When I first explain it to you, it's gonna sound not that original. It's actually gonna sound really cliche. It's gonna seem nebulous. And this is really, I think, just one of the things you gotta look at it, from your own perspective. Do you think this is a good motivation? Do you think it's a well-written motivation once you know about his backstory? Because you can't just take it at face value. I'm going to explain to you in a second what his goal is, but you can't just take that at face value and say, oh, that's a boring, freaking cliche as all hell motivation. We've seen that before plenty of times. That's poor writing. You got to take it with his backstory. You got to collect it all together, and then you got to make the decision, all right? And that's really what this little mini arc, that like My Villain Academia, that little like flashback with the villains and everything, that's really what this was about, okay? So his motivation is he wants the whole world to decay and rot and just disappear. And the way that he actually put it into words was, why not just destroy everything? Or why not just decay everything? And that was his motivation, and that's what his ultimate goal is. Now, what exactly does that mean, like, specifically? Because when he says that, there's a bunch of panels that appear behind him. You see panels of a city, and people going to school, and a newborn baby, and Tomura's like, screw it, just destroy everything. I mean, like, he's a pretty straightforward kid, guys. I mean, I don't think he's, meaning it in any sort of, like, way where he's like, I'll destroy the society and then I'll rule over the society. No, I really think it's, screw this world. I'm just gonna destroy everything, including myself at some point. It's just, you know, I'm just gonna be the one to do that. To take what I'm feeling on the inside and just make it a reality? Why not? Seems like a good enough goal as anything, right? So, yeah, cliche. Like, I want to destroy the world! You know, we've heard that before from plenty of really lame, you know, villains back in the day, comic books, you know, it's something that happens quite a bit. But then you look at his backstory and what happened to him, and it's kind of like you arrive at the conclusion, like, well, what other kind of freaking goal would he have, you know, after all that crap that happened to him, alright? So here's what happened with him, alright. Tomura is the grandson of Shimura Nana, who is, of course, the 7th user of All for One, One for All, sorry, and, you know, All Might's mentor, okay? So Shimura had a son, and then that son got married and then had Tomura. His original name, though, is not Tomura Shigaraki, as you would imagine. It's a different last name. His real name is Tenko Shimura. Tomura Shigaraki was a name that All for One gave him later. Tomura can translate literally out to funerals, and Shigaraki, shi, of course, means death in Japanese. Gara means like a grip or a hold, which makes sense given the hands and his decay. He has to touch something like the death grip, and then ki just in tree. So you could maybe translate out his last name to be like, you know, you have death, you have his grip, and then you have a tree, something full of life and energy, and he touches it and just rots it away. And then funerals, of course, is self-explanatory. Also kind of similar to Dabi's name, which Dabi just translates out to, you know, cremation. So a lot of dark names for the villains. But hey, they're working out. They're cool, right? So, when he was a little kid, though, you know, he basically killed his entire family. Not basically, he killed his entire family, including the family dog, everybody around him that he felt like any sort of connection to. And he didn't do it because he was throwing a tantrum. He didn't do it because he was mad at them. No, he did it because his quirk manifested, and it was freaking Decay. So, I want you to imagine, this is really messed up. It seriously is. But I want you, because this is probably what actually happened, all right? And this scenario, why? Like, it makes perfect sense how he would end up like this, okay? His quirk manifests, because for little kids, they don't always manifest at the exact same time for every little kid. Sometimes they manifest when they're toddlers, when they're babies even, maybe. Sometimes it takes a little bit while longer for them to manifest when they're like kindergarten age, okay? Like, one day you wake up and you're just having a normal day as a little kid. Here, honey, have some breakfast. Great, I'm gonna go play with the dog. And you touch it, and it dies right in your arms. Not just dies, it just rots away. Like, you could slowly seeing the flesh ripping from its fur and just pfft. And then you cry in agony. Your mom comes out to see what's wrong, and it's like, Mom, and then she picks you up because you're crying, and while you're holding on to her, she starts screaming bloody murder and drops to the ground. And then your dad comes in, and you're like, Dad! And, like, because you're a little kid, you're like 5 years old, you have no idea what the hell is happening. Holy crap! Is it any wonder how he turned out? Is it any wonder how he's mentally unstable and he has just these random fits? Is it any wonder that his goal, his ultimate goal is like, screw it, let's just destroy everything? Makes perfect sense to me! 5-year-old kid encounters that. I mean, Tomura himself stated he has very splotchy memories from that. He can barely remember it. The first time he began to remember what happened, All for One took him in and he started to remember. He physically started puking all over the floor like he was just gonna pass out from the sheer trauma of it. And if he ever remembers it in full when doesn't matter how old he is, he would probably have the exact same reaction right now. And that's not even the most messed up part. It isn't. So after that happened, after he, just accidentally decayed his entire family, he was an orphan. He was left living on the streets, and nobody did anything about him. Nobody even came close to him. I can imagine there might have been a few more occasions of that. Imagine this, like, little kids sitting in an alleyway, just shivering, hungry, cold, and then, like, I don't know, a freaking, a little bunny, looking around for food comes up to you, and you're this little kid, and you're like, aw, little bunny, and you touch it and it dies! It's like, there's like nothing good for this kid. And then, eventually after living in just poverty for God knows how long, where he's about to almost starve to death, that's when All for One shows up and takes him in. And he, of course, knew all about Nana Shimura, because, it's All Might's master and everything. And so he gives him a place to live, and he starts teaching him about his quirk, and he starts telling him, more importantly, where to direct all of those feelings you have, because he remembered what happened with his family. He started to puke all over the place, and he's like, I will teach you how to take all that rage, all those feelings inside of you, and I will teach you how to direct it. And that's what I'm going to do. But at the end of the day, All for One wanted Tomura, to make his own decision on where he wanted to go. He didn't want Tomura to be just his puppet, like, oh, I will now control you and you will do everything I say to the letter. No, that wasn't it. All for One's motive for this, it was spite. He wanted to do it just to screw with All Might, just to screw with Nana's memory. Just like, I'm gonna take her grandson in, and I'm just going to raise him up the way I want. I'm going to be his master, teach him about how horrible the world is, and then, he's going to turn into a villain, and he's going to do whatever he does at that point. That's up to him. But can you think of that? Like, what worse way can you think to dishonor Shimura, Nana, and All Might than having this kid grow up, and now his ultimate goal is, I just want to destroy the entire world. I want to, like, rot everybody, every man, woman, and child, just gone. Like, that's, like, All for One would be, oh, my boy, you're so happy, that's great, that's awesome, That's the perfect outcome I could have wished for. So, freaking All for One is hanging out in Tartaros right now, probably having a happy, jolly laugh in his jail cell, like, oh, man, this is great, And so after that, the doctor appears, and it's like, oh, by the way, I recovered a few remaining fragments of your family. Their hands... It's the only thing that survived, the decay. So I'm also assuming his decay also is completely dependent on his mental state at the time. Because, when he was fighting Aizawa, the decay was very slow. With his family and his dog and everything, it seemed like his mental state was well, maybe not with the dog, because I'm thinking the dog was the first that he did, and then after that he was freaking out, and so the decay was a lot faster with his family members. And then later on, right now in the series, like present day, he's able to just rush up to people and just disintegrate them with his one hand and just gone, so he's able to control it better now. But yeah, the doctor's like, oh, here we go, all of the disembodied hands of your family members, what do you want to do with them? And so Tomura, it was also All for One's idea as well, but they preserve the hands. They're still the flesh of his family. They preserve the hands, have those little, like, attachments to them, and those little, like, wire cleaners or something, these tubes and shit, and then he starts attaching them all over his body. And this is really messed up. The way that Tomura explains the sensation of having all these hands of his family, and I don't know who else it is, because it's like, okay, his mother has 2 hands, his father 2 hands. Those are only 4 hands. Where did all the other hands come from? Friends, family, aunts, uncles, random acquaintances, maybe somebody he looked up to in the neighborhood, like, hi, Mr. Mailman, how you do? Oh, Mr. Mailman, no! And so the way he describes it is, they make me feel nauseated, but they also make me feel calm at the same time. Having these hands plastered all over my body. I'm like, oh, holy shit. So, I mean, like, this is a complicated as hell character. He really is. I mean, don't let that motive and goal fool you. I mean, if you just go up to somebody on the street and you just explain to them, like maybe somebody that hasn't really read My Hero Academia, or they're just getting into it, and you explain to them, oh yeah, the main villain of the series, he just wants to destroy all of humanity, just wipe them all out. They're gonna be like, that's kind of boring, that's kind of bland. No, after you read everything involving the character, everything he's been through, the trauma that he's suffered, it all clicks. It all makes sense. It's all real. I mean, like, if we lived in a world where superpowers actually existed, in the same way they do in My Hero Academia, I don't think Tomura would just be an isolated case. There would probably be a lot of incidents where what happens when a little toddler awakens an extremely deadly quirk. I think I brought this up when I did Aoyama's video. It was like, Aoyama has the ability to shoot a laser out of his navel. Like, what happened? Like, can you think of how scarred he would be for life if he was sitting there in his high chair when he was a little kid eating his freaking cereal or whatever, and then his mom comes in and he accidentally activates his quirk for the first time and it just shoots right through her. It's like, just drops her. Like, you figure in a world like this, that has to happen more than just a few, probably not like prevalent. Most quirks, especially when they awaken at a young age, are not going to be extremely deadly. But some certainly are. Tomura's a perfect example of that. How many other, like, mentally unstable people are there out there that have extremely traumatic childhood memories that they locked away because of their quirk awakening? Like, Kirishima had one. It wasn't as bad, but Kirishima, when he first awakened his quirk, he hardened his skin and he scratched his face, and that's how he has that scar. And so, I mean, that didn't mess him up as much as, you know, it's a far cry. Oh, I scarred my face. A far cry from disintegrating your entire family. But it developed a complex for Kirishima where he didn't like his quirk. He hated his quirk for a long time. And so it adds a whole new level of introspection on this world and all these characters and just like all the different complexes and maybe repressed memories that they would have because of how their quirks operated when they were little kids and like the first time they awakened it. It's crazy, but I love Horikoshi for delving into it. It's insanely good. And so, you know, if I was going to give an alignment to Tomura, I mean, it basically has to be chaotic evil. I mean, once your ultimate goal is to just destroy all of humanity and, like, even you alongside with it, like, just everything burns, everything decays, everything just disappears. I mean, at that point, you pretty much have to go with the chaotic evil thing. But it works for him. It does. But he also has intelligence. In fact, with the stats that were given in the character guidebook, his intelligence is actually really good, along with his technique. It's insanely good, actually. So he has this potential to come up with really good plans to get what he wants. His end goal is to end everything, but in order to get there, he has like a bunch of little steps or like levels he has to clear in order to get to that point. One such level is he has to get rid of All Might. He wants All Might to just disappear from the world because that'll be like the first step. You know, you knock the pillar out from underneath the scaffolding and everything falls apart after that. The whole building crashes down and the world is left in this ruin, and that's like the perfect time for him to act. You know, like the world has been crushed. But you could, oh, by the way, you could take it figuratively, you know, like, oh, I don't want to literally destroy the world. I just want to destroy the peace that is built up. You know, you could look at it figuratively, but considering Tomura's, you know, attitude and everything and how he doesn't usually tend to mince words, I think he was also serious when he meant it. He could also mean it literally as well. You know, like, is he ever going to get that far? Probably not, no. But, I mean, from his warped perspective, sure. But, you know, he has this intelligence, like, okay, we're going to attack the USJ. We're going to do it when the only teachers there are like 13 and Aizawa, and all the other teachers are gone, and the students are isolated, and this will show them that we're serious. We're going to bring all of these villains here to attack at once, and then we have a Nomu that we have, and then All Might's going to show up, and the Nomu is going to defeat All Might. Like, they had this planned out. Now, also, he has Kurogiri, which Kurogiri for a long time basically served as Tomura's, like, butler, his attendant, his, like, support structure, because he was more grounded in reality, and he would help out Tomura as much as he could, but then Kurogiri gets taken away, and so Tomura is just left to his own, and you could see the sorry state that the League of Villains was in, you know, just in that arc we just finished up, that little mini arc there with the past arc and everything, the flashback. They were basically just living out in the mountains in this ramshackled, rusty old hovel, you know, because Kurogiri was gone, and now it's just Tomura, who, you know, if he had his wits about him all the time, he could actually become really efficient with that. But it's like he has to come up with this plan, and he's coming up with the plan, but then all of a sudden his brain just goes haywire, and he's like, you know, mother, father, what am I gonna do now? You know, so yeah, it's a tough little balancing act he's got going on there, but he is intelligent, so you can't just overlook that. You can't just look at him like, oh, he's just a crazy man. He's just, oh my god! He's the Joker! Is that, I mean, now listen. I don't read DC comic books, okay? So there's been several different variations of the Joker, but the Heath Ledger Joker from The Dark Knight, that Joker I'm familiar with. That's Tomura. Holy crap. Like, the overarching goal and just the messed up fate. You know what the really messed up thing is? He was actually supposed to be creepier, if you can imagine that. Yeah. This is Horikoshi's original design for Tomura. You know, he had like the weird freaky ring Sadako, just, you know, that's the kind of face he was originally meant to have, which would be even more terrifying. Oh, God. But that's seriously him. Now, listen, this isn't going to be the only thing I want to talk about with Tomura, okay? I wanted to make this video to get just the character out there and talk about everything, especially with the new revelations we got. There's a few more things to tackle, but considering that we're now starting a new arc that's going to heavily feature the League of Villains and Tomura, as well as Spinner, which I'm loving that, because Spinner, I always felt like this, he was just this background character that wasn't really that important. Like, oh yeah, let's just throw a lizard man into the League of Villains. He fits. But Spinner's getting a lot more screen time, and I'm really liking his outlook on things and his perspective. He doesn't really actually honestly seem like that bad of a guy, does he? Spinner, I mean, yeah, he's taken some people out, and he's committed, you know, pretty of heinous acts and everything, but from just his, you know, way of looking at everything, he seems to have pretty noble intentions, even if they are skewed into the negative light. You know, he's not a really bad guy if you know, want to look at it like that. But, yeah, the League is going to have a lot more development coming up, so I'll be making videos as this arc progresses on the League and on Tomura and their connection to all of that. But, yeah, just out of the gate, that's Tomura! Comment below on what you think about it. Yeah. I got nothing else. I'm waiting to see what happens next. And the final battle between Izuku and Tomura, oh my god, I can kind of see what's happening with that right now in my head. Can you not? Like, Izuku is somebody that grew up with, I mean, his dad really wasn't around too much, but his mom was there. He had All Might. All of Izuku's, like, childhood dreams kind of came to fruition. He ended up getting a quirk. He ended up meeting his hero. He ended up training with his hero. He ended up going to UA. All of his childhood dreams are coming true. He's great. And then, on the exact flip side of that coin, there's freaking Tomura. Wiped out his family with a quirk that, you know, was deadly at the touch, you know, lived in poverty, almost starved to death. Let's see here, holding on to the remnants of his family members and friends on him at all times, having this intense rage and psychotic breaks all the time. Yeah, this is gonna be a fun story arc with Izuku and Tomura building to their final battle. It's gonna be a ride, I could tell you. It's gonna be a lot more interesting than a lot of other ones. It's probably gonna be a little bit more intrigued than the Naruto Sasuke dynamic. I'm thinking it's gonna be a little bit more intense than that. Alright, well anyway, I'm just rambling on at this point. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking signing out. Later. Oh.